of this call, I guess, is like we aim that it's valuable for you by being also valuable to us. We've done a lot of work over the years on this whole thing of perfectionism, but it's a practice. And so George and I let you in on our ongoing practice of how we keep the tendrils of perfectionism at bay. Sometimes we have good weeks, sometimes we have bad weeks. Sometimes we experiment and we find new things, and this is all what we're sharing now as an experiment to see how valuable it is for you. Sometimes we're coachy, sometimes we're conversation-y. We're going to kind of bring this in as something we make alliance around, and we invite you to see, how does this apply to you? What do you take away from what you witness? And of course, you also have the opportunity to swap with one of us to be the check-in partner if you want to. You email us to participate.
Yeah. And to support your reflections, if you haven't gotten the link from the emails, I posted it in the chat. Feel free to download that, just to help you pick out the coaching aspects and interventions and tips and tricks and see how they might support you in your own perfectionism practice.
Amazing. And with all that said, shall we get started?
I think we shall.
I wonder if we just take a little moment just to get present. Just going to take a couple of deep breaths. So George, for our check-in today, do you want me to be more coachy or conversation-y?
I have something to share where it's a bit more conversational, but I've ended up in an area where I also want definitely some support to navigate out of it, because I think I'm starting to logic myself into a corner.
Okay.
Which I'm very good at.
Yes.
Those are those moments where some external questioning is very helpful. Yeah. So I'm going to start with a share, and then I'll let you know when it's time to probe me, if that's okay. And what about you today?
Perfect. I think I'm more in conversation, because I've just had like some incredible personal epiphanies this week around the difference between sleep and rest, and what rest really means. So I'd love to share those distinctions, but if you notice that I'm going down any little logic holes, please feel free to pull me out.
Okay, sounds good. And who would like to start? I asked both of us.
Yeah, I can't remember who went first last time. George, why don't you go first?
Okay. Okay. So my action from last time was, I'm blanking now. I've done it. What was it again?
You were talking about this earlier, George, and I've just blanked on it too. People who attended the call last week.
I have complete emptiness in my mind. This is, it's nice, but it's not what I'm looking for right now.
And I always close my email. Okay, while you think of that, I'm going to have to go first then. Because I remember my action for the week was to be mindfully aware and to be kind to myself when I noticed perfectionism kicking in. Because I had such epiphanies around energy and then came across a couple of podcasts, I only noticed one little thing of perfectionism, which will make you all smile. And I was able to smile at it. And it's that I bought these really nice moleskin notebooks, and I really struggled to write in them. And I ended up writing in this crappy one that I got free from something. And I don't know why, it's just so easy for me to write in the not special notebook. So I just witnessed that with amusement. And I'm going to allow myself to use the moleskins.
Ah, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you think came up for you that made the switch?
Well, I think now that I'm like aware of this, I can just kind of flow that easiness of writing into the into the other notebook. I think that's easy. It's finding the playfulness to do that.
Yeah. And I'm very much appreciate that you're more of a go forth with the solution and enjoy that type of person. But what was the thing that deterred you from using the Moleskine in the first place?
Do you know what? I honestly think it's just that thread of just that unconscious moment of perfectionism, of being afraid that what I write in this special notebook, in this notebook that has more value, that was more expensive, only really good notes should go in there, right? But it's just like the noticing of the, which reminds me, because it's just as soon as you notice it, like my little thing of playfulness can kick in, right? And this reminds me of what your action was, because it was around what I call unbounded play.
Yep.
And it was about how you were going to allow yourself to just investigate something just for the joy of it.
Of course. And and I did. And I did a fair amount of it. And that's actually a nice segue to then what came to me, because I started doing that again. If we're ready to switch over.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. We haven't really talked about your observations on sleep and rests.
No, let me give you a tiny bit of that, because the segue into your unbounded play will make total sense.
Mm-hmm.
So my realization that I talked about last week was how I was getting more sleep, but I wasn't necessarily feeling more energized. And what I'd started to realize for myself was that there are different dimensions of energy, right? And we have mental energy, emotional energy. I was talking to myself about biological energy, as in getting out in nature and what we eat. And then I came across a podcast episode that had the work of Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith on it. And she talks about sacred rest. Had to look up and make sure I really understood what the word sacred means. But it means that it's something that's deserving of respect, that's regarded as too valuable to be interfered with, right? Sacrosanct, like you don't mess with it. And she calls out 7 categories of rest. And I just had these epiphanies that like 3 of mine were really short. Now, one of her categories is exactly what you're talking about in terms of like this, the unbounded play, the release that comes from doing something just for the sheer joy of doing it.
Yeah. So
why don't you talk about that and how that helped you?
Yeah. So this, my research time chunks, they are very much like that, and it's a way for my creativity to unfold. And it feeds my core value of wanting to learn and wanting to find out more and understand things better. And it also supports my value of freedom, right? Because the only constraint that I have is a time chunk of 3 hours. And within that, I pick a theme and I go and I learn, and wherever it takes me is fine and is wonderful. And the first time chunk I did that again was kind of just repaying a debt, if you will, of not having done that for quite some weeks. The last time was probably in between lockdown and quarantine. But anyway, and the second time chunk, my brain was finally at a state again where it used to go when I did this regularly in my week pre-lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
And it allowed me to finally zoom out. And that's why I chose my background today.
Right.
And I finally started to look at the more of a systemic view of our family system and how everything fits together.
Right.
So because the state of mind that I got into coming back and until realizing that I needed this transition week was, well, Diana is back full time. I'm going to go back near full time, and it's going to be go, 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 right? And which was suboptimal. The transition week allowed me to realize that actually we are in a quite fortunate position right now as a family where we don't have to worry about money. And we don't have to worry about shelter. We don't have to worry about the basic necessities. And I've worked very hard for many years, and I'm in the fortunate position to be able to structure my work so that I can actually optimize for the joy of our family time. So I've chosen to not work 5 days, not work 4 days. 4 days would be the max, but work for anywhere between 3 and 4 days a week, and use that 1 or 2 days to do stuff for the family, right? So that when Diana is out of full-time work and at home and we're together with Sammy, that we can actually be together as a family, and we don't have to juggle chores around, and we can actually connect and enjoy our time together. So, and if it wasn't for the second time chunk, I wouldn't have had the mental space to realize that. And that's why I've missed so much about these things. It's not only what I learn, it's also that my brain is engaged in such a way where ideas that are unrelated pop up, which is something that also happens during running for me. But, you know, usually 3 hours give you more ideas than 30 minutes. But anyway. Right. So that's all wonderful. And I'm very, very satisfied. The question still then remains, and this is where I'm logicking myself into a corner, how I'm time chunking the 3 to 4 days a week. I believe in the concept of chunking. I think we talked about it before. And some time chunks are already wonderfully allocated with things like what we're doing together. And there is, some one-to-one coaching and one-to-one mentoring, but the other ones are not allocated. And I have used so many, evaluation and analysis critiques in another time chunk, trying to figure out what I'm putting in there. And, I've used Ikigai and pros, cons, and weighted job to job for it. And, you name the prioritization technique, I've probably tried it. So that leads me to think that it's not a problem of the rational side, or even, and I've also tried a combination of 4 Ds, which is delete, defer, delegate, or do. Which I added to with what I'm optimizing for, and how can I Marie Kondo whatever I put into those lists.
So George, is it okay to interrupt you a moment?
I think you should, because otherwise I'm going to keep going on.
Because do you think, so what I'm hearing is that long list of all the things you've tried. Is it possible that you might be overthinking it?
Yeah, I think I am. And that's not a surprise. My brain really likes to do that. Yeah, no matter whether it's a small thing or a big thing.
Yeah. So 2 things occur to me. I wonder if they might have occurred to you. Is it okay to share them?
Yeah, one more thing, and I'll also consider just using flow-based. So that's my current favorite. Based on pull, I do a quick Marie Kondo check and I go with it. So that's my current favorite, but I'm hesitant to just go with that. Anyway, you go.
Because I'm curious about that hesitance, because if you've thought about it to that extent, does it even matter? And so can anyone go first?
I think what comes in is the fear of making the quote unquote wrong decision. Right. So by saying yes to something, I inevitably say no to several other things.
So maybe I just remind you that your yes has no value unless you say no. And your values help you know what to say no to. Can't say yes to everything. But also from Agile, right, we know that there are no big decisions anymore. There are just experiments. So there can be no wrong decision. It's just an experiment. How do you feel from that perspective?
Yeah, I tried to think about it also that way. But the things that are at the top of the list to choose from, the short list, are already validated things. So I've either done them in the past, or I've done enough of it to validate them as something that is something I care about, something that other people care about, and something where there is a value exchange possible.
Right.
But they, and so in my mind, I'm looking at experiments as something, short and quick, and that's already done for those things. So now I'm left with sort of bigger things, and I still have to choose. So I've got it down to what, six things, but with the time chunks, I can only accommodate 2, maybe 3.
Okay, so we're gonna do something. So you've got your list of 6 things. Do you know what each of the 6 are?
Yes.
Okay, so the first one you're going to do, right? Don't think what happens. Tell me what you feel. So you're going to do 2 first. What comes up for you?
Honestly, I haven't given them numbers. I just know what the 6 are. So we didn't set up for this properly. But now, interestingly, if I were to put them into a list, how will I think about which one I put in number 2 that you've prioritized and given a number 2?
Well, that's the other way of doing it. What thing would you chuck into bucket 2? And how would you feel? Like, what comes up for you when you just think about starting with anyone? Just taking action. If all of the things are good, all of the things are validated, all of the things are equal, doesn't matter, does it? So if you disengage your head and you let your belly choose.
That's the way of deciding that I have the least practice with.
Yeah. So what would it be like to practice with that? Because you know that all of your intelligence is not just in your brain.
Yes.
In your head.
We have a decentralized brain. The majority of it just happens to be in our skull.
Right. So if you connect to all of your intelligence, what helps you do that? What helps you connect to all of your intelligence?
So that would definitely narrow the list down to 4.
But that wasn't the question I asked, was it?
No, but I thought I was doing the thing already. So
yeah. But what helps you connect out of your head into the fullness of your intelligence?
Yes, it's weird because then these thoughts come up into my brain and said, well, yeah, but no, if I if I did that, then it's just based on either whom I like to work more with, or all these things that aren't supposed to be so sophisticated criteria.
Yeah. But the thing is, if the purpose of life, like if life is supposed to feel good, why are those criteria, why are those human factors less valid?
I don't know, really.
And could it be that?
So here is one blocker that keeps coming up when I try to entertain that thinking, and that is loyalty. Yeah. So I think in working engagements or working relationships, not necessarily with clients, but with other professionals, I can be loyal almost to a fault.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm having a hard time making peace with the fact that that might hold me back, right? So I value loyalty higher than almost a rational review and retrospective of how the partnership is going.
Mm.
And I think the fear in there is loss of belonging or loss of connection or fear of judgment.
And what part of you is it that feels that? Like, where do you physically feel that?
Where where the fear and the anxiety sits. So very, very deep in the chest.
Mm. So if you just breathe into that space. What does this anxiety need?
It needs courage and love.
What kind of courage?
Like the kind of courage you need to rip off the Band-Aid in order to see that the wound has already healed.
So if you just take a moment to just breathe and connect into your body, where do you find that courage?
Looking at the rest of the list.
But where in your body do you feel that?
You and your body. You and your body questions. Where do I feel that courage? That would be bottom of the belly.
Bottom of the belly. Because I just reflect back that when you said, oh, it's in looking at the rest of the list, you didn't seem to think that. You didn't do that, oh, I have to look at the list. It just seemed to come. Right? So when you connect in to the bottom of the belly, into the courage that's there, the courage to rip off the plaster, to see the wounds already healed, what's the sensation that you feel there?
This is warm and calm.
Warm and calm.
Calm. Kind of relaxed. Yeah, relaxed.
Does it have a color associated with it?
No, doesn't work like that. Aphantasia.
Does it have a taste or a smell?
Nope, same thing. Aphantasia, multisensory aphantasia. I can give you data points and factoids.
Just stay with the sensations that you feel.
Yeah.
So you feel this calm. Does it have a weight? This calm, warm sensation.
No, pretty much just is.
Yeah. And as you connect into it, how can you allow it to increase?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to really sit with it, because this type of work is very hard.
Maybe a better question is, what enables you to connect with it more easily? What helps you connect with it?
Yeah, I gotta slow down and just really focus on it. Yeah.
So if you slow down and you really focus on it, just take a few moments just to do that. There's no rush. Slow down and focus on it. And then you look at the list. What occurs to you from that space?
Yeah, that's the list down to 4.
And which 3 are you going to take forward first? From your belly?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go Marie Kondo again. So out of the 4, one of them is kind of, it's interesting, it's kind of joyful, but yeah, not really so bringing the joy as much as the other 3.
Cool. So was that helpful to explore the other places that your intelligence exists to add to your decision making?
I've been playing with this for a long time, and it's so difficult to connect with the rest of the body. There are some things where it's easier to access it, other things where it's more difficult. This has been one of the more difficult ones.
So it strikes me that you have very heavily practiced thinking.
Yeah.
I
think I know why, because my mind has to work differently and almost a bit more, because I have a blind mind's eye.
Right.
And I cannot imagine what it's like for someone who can imagine pictures, sounds, smells, those things. I don't have those things. And I think those are also gateways to the rest of the body that are then kind of blocked off for me. So strong emotions help me to much more easily connect with the body. But when it's a bit more abstract, a bit more subtle, and it's very difficult to get a read on it.
Yeah, I hear that. I'm just curious, because I know in terms of perfectionism, one of the things is that if we can't do it very well, we kind of err away from doing it. And I think our culture is so skewed to thinking, even if it's faulty thinking, even if it's broken thinking, it's think. So these other dimensions of feeling, right, which you can do, sensing, which you can do, and intuiting, which you probably can do. These are just tools and practices and capabilities we need to develop. And if you think about how much effort, how much study time, how much of your life's energy you've poured into this, what would it be like to allow yourself to put some of that perfectionist drive into developing your other capabilities?
Yeah. Yoga helped in the past. And running also, but the longer distances of running helped in the past. So anything 10K plus, because up until that point it's just running. But from 10K it's a lot of shutting off the mind and getting connected to the body and just
Right.
So that helped a lot.
Yeah. So you already recognize that be mechanisms to shut off the mind and connect into the body help.
Yeah.
So just bringing this around in the interest of time, is that something that feels appropriate for you to experiment with in the coming week? How you can connect in more physically and listen to the messages, like the feeling, like exactly what happened, just this bubbling up of, the list is 4. And actually it's those 3. Does that feel like it might be valuable? How do you feel when I say that?
I think the practice needs to come to then block off the chatter coming back from up here. Right. So allowing that intuitive surfacing of the decision and going with that, and then not second guessing it through another round of analysis.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Yeah.
I wonder if that's where the experiment then needs to be.
It will.
Just going with it.
Yep.
Noticing what you notice.
Even when you just going with it, I feel some resistance in my stomach. And that will be the practice. Good. What will be your experiment for the next week? Thank you, Sam.
You're welcome. I'll share in the chat the link to Dr. Sandra's work, where you can read about these 7 types of rest, because honestly, that's been the massive game changer with me. I recognized in one of so linking together what George has just explored now and something that we explored in a further session, I noticed as I was listening to this podcast that I was feeling before listening to this podcast, I noticed I was feeling a certain way. And I had to explore those sensations to notice what it was that I was feeling. Because it's so counterintuitive that what I was feeling was actually a sense of loneliness. Right? And I couldn't figure that out because I've got great friends, I've got an amazing husband. Then listening to her podcast, I realized there is this very specific kind of emotional rest that comes from being able to express our feelings, being our truly authentic self. Now, I've made it a practice to be authentic. So this face of Sam, you will see, in a club, on stage, in a business meeting. I feel like I am just one person. There's only one of me. But this thing about safely expressing my feelings, I struggle to do that, especially when it's about plans and my deep desires. And I realized I hadn't been doing that. And also around social, because we've all been locked down, like I haven't seen a lot of my friends like in actual human form. So it's those aspects of rest that I'm going to be like leaning into, because even the little bit that I've done, so going wild swimming with a friend and telling my husband about how I felt about all of that, all of that together just gave me such a huge energy boost. I can't tell you. It felt like it just unlocked something in me. But that's really about rest. So I wonder if the perfectionism thing needs to be about writing into my moleskin journal. So yeah, that's me. And I'm just conscious of time because we need to give you your 5 minutes for questions.
Any questions? Yeah. So Sam, the thing could be to write about rest in your moleskin notebook.
I will. That's a great one.
Good. Okay. Right. So thanks again for listening to our check-in, people. Do you have any questions for us about any of the coaching prompts, techniques, references that you just observed? How are these resonating with you?
I would say that despite the fact the body questions seems to annoy you, George, they seem to be very effective, and I can relate with that too. I was just reminding there is a book mentioned in an article that I recently read. It's called The Wisdom of the Body. It's from Dr.
Bill Claxton?
Yes.
Yes.
And it says that the willing you have for eating something salty or sweet is because of your body missing some ingredients or some minerals that are particularly found in that type of food. So this mention that you said of the decentralized intelligence made me think a lot and feel also. Thank you.
It's amazing you bring that up, Ciliander, because actually, Bill Claxton was one of the guest tutors on my coaching school course. And he wrote an incredible book called Intelligence in the Flesh. And in the lesson that he gave us, which isn't publicly available anywhere, which kills me because I want to share it with people, but he makes such a good case for the fact that intelligence rests in not knowing. And we explore this in agile practices, right? But it's how we apply this to ourselves also. And that's why, although it's tricky, and as a coach, what's going on inside me is like, I know George doesn't like going into his body. But I know so truly that George is a human with a body and that he's missing so much value from being disconnected from it. So I just work to help him connect back.
Which Sam has permission for, because we have an overarching frame of permissioning for the work that we do together.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Does anybody else have any other question or reflection they'd like to share?
I want to say thank you, George. Sam knows how badly I connect with the rest of my body when I try to make a decision. So I was feeling you like very strongly. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And it's not that there's anything wrong with either of you, right? We swim in this society that just prizes the head. So we have like, what, 40, 50 years of like head. Of course, it's hard to connect to the body, but you know, he or she is still there.
Yeah, it was habit.
Yep.
And every time you found the spot, I was like, yeah. Okay, so thank you.
One of the practices I'll share really quickly because it's so easy, but during lockdown, I feel like there was so much anxiety and head stuff floating around. I feel like I got really disconnected from my body. So one of the practices I've been doing, it comes from martial arts called Do-In. Leanne might know it as she's a martial artist, but it starts with rubbing in a particular order, it doesn't really matter, but like rubbing all of your body, like not being rude, but like things like, you know, like my stomach, I'd eaten so many biscuits, put on so much weight, like my thighs that I carry shame about, body shame, you know, my ass, but just rubbing it, connecting into the body, honestly, it's so helpful. Because all of this crap that happens in our head, it just starts to fall away when you actually connect in. So, oh yeah, you can look that up as well. It's called Go In, if that's helpful. And I'm just conscious we are like 2 minutes over.
Yeah, went a little bit longer, but yeah, body work is slow work.
Exactly. So you're welcome to drop off, but just to give you the moment, is there anything else that you would like to raise or ask?
And while you do that, I'm going to paste the link to our feedback form in the chat.
Yeah, just to share something. So I think a couple of months back, during one of the coaching sessions when we reviewed a kind of a recording, which used similar technique around the body. And I think there is a name for it when you coach in that way, but I just can't remember. I tried to Google
coaching.
Yeah.
Experience. Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So then we reviewed it, and then almost everyone felt uncomfortable. even it was just a recording. It wasn't like live coaching or anything. But I just wanted to share that, so then people who felt similarly, it's not just you.
Yeah, it's the because we're not used to it, right? It's so foreign and alien to us. Yeah, because as Sam said, we're very head focused in our society, and actually bringing the body into it. Yeah, we're not so familiar with it, so it takes practice to make the unfamiliar more familiar. And
this is so important when we're talking about this perfectionism work and the value of the check-ins, because it has to be a practice. Because George expanding his current way of making decisions is going to feel really uncomfortable, and it's not going to feel natural, right? And so that's how we support each other. As we do something different, then it feels unfamiliar, even though we know it helps.
Yeah. And maybe at this point, we're going to switch over from the call itself. And if you want to hang around for the after call party and stick around for a bit more chat or questions, feel free to do so. But for the official ending of the call, once again, thank you all very much for tuning in. Sam and I will stick around if you want to also. And thank you very much for our live stream viewers. And if you catch this recording, thank you so much also for joining. And please remember to share your feedback in the feedback form. So we're going to stop the recording